I was 19 years old, sleeping on a worn bench in Morrison Park with nothing but a threadbare backpack and a fading dream of college, when I threw myself between a terrified woman and 3 men trying to rip her purse away. I had no idea that the woman I saved that night was Dr. Catherine Walsh, one of the wealthiest philanthropists in the city, or that she would spend the next 5 years quietly watching over me, waiting for the moment when she could change my life forever. What she handed me at my college graduation 5 years later wasn't just an envelope. It was proof that one moment of courage when you have nothing can lead to everything you've ever wanted. Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I always love seeing our global community come together. If you enjoy stories about second chances, unexpected guardians, and how one act of bravery can transform your entire future, make sure to hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel so you never miss these inspiring true stories. Now, let me take you back to that cold October night 5 years ago when I was just a homeless teenager with nothing to lose and everything to prove. The park bench had become my bedroom 3 months earlier, after my foster mother decided that 18 was old enough to figure life out on my own. She hadn't been cruel about it, just matter of fact, explaining that the state checks had stopped and she had 3 younger kids to feed. I'd left with 2 changes of clothes, my high school diploma, and $47 that lasted exactly 9 days. By the time October rolled around, I'd learned which park benches the police didn't check after midnight, which fast food restaurants threw out perfectly good food at closing time, and which library branches let you sit all day without asking questions as long as you looked like you were studying something. My name is Maya Rodriguez, and before I ended up on that bench, I'd been the kind of student teachers wrote college recommendation letters about. I'd maintained a 3.9 grade point average while working 20 hours a week at a grocery store, dreaming about becoming a social worker so I could help kids like me, kids who aged out of the system with nowhere to go and no one to call family. I'd been accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, but partial wasn't enough when you needed money for housing, food, books, and all the invisible costs that people with families never think about. I'd deferred my admission, telling myself it was just for a year, just until I saved enough money. But 3 months into homelessness, that dream felt like something from someone else's life. The bench in Morrison Park was actually one of the better spots. It was tucked behind a cluster of oak trees that provided some cover from the wind, close enough to the street that I felt relatively safe, far enough that most people walking by didn't notice me. I'd wrapped myself in every piece of clothing I owned, 2 t-shirts, a hoodie, and a denim jacket that had been thick enough in August but felt like paper now that fall had arrived. My backpack served as a pillow, containing everything I owned in the world: a change of clothes, a toothbrush I used in public restroom sinks, my high school diploma in a plastic folder, my acceptance letter to State University, and a photograph of my younger brother Miguel that I'd managed to keep through 6 different foster homes. Miguel was the reason I'd stayed in school, the reason I'd kept trying even when everything felt impossible. He was 12 now, still in the system, placed with a family 2 hours away that I hadn't been allowed to visit since I'd aged out. Before they separated us, I'd promised him I'd make something of myself, that I'd become a social worker and help kids like us, that I'd prove we weren't just statistics or case files or problems to be managed. That promise was the only thing that kept me going on nights when the cold seeped into my bones, and I wondered if anyone would even notice if I just disappeared. I'd developed a routine by then, a careful choreography of survival. I woke up before dawn, before the joggers and dog walkers started their morning rounds, and packed everything into my backpack. I'd walk to the 24-hour diner on 5th Street where the night manager, a tired woman named Rosa who'd never asked questions, let me use the bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth. Then I'd head to the public library when it opened at 9, spending the day reading, applying for jobs on the public computers, and trying to look like just another student, rather than someone with nowhere else to go. I'd learned to make one cup of coffee last for hours at various coffee shops, to smile gratefully when someone left a half-eaten sandwich on a table, to be invisible in all the ways that mattered. The hardest part wasn't the hunger or the cold, or even the fear. It was the shame. The way I'd cross the street if I saw someone from high school, terrified they'd see what I'd become. The way I'd scrub my clothes in public bathroom sinks and hang them to dry in library bathroom stalls, praying no one would notice. The way I'd stopped looking at myself in mirrors because I couldn't stand to see the dark circles under my eyes, or the way my cheekbones had started to protrude, or the defeat that had crept into my expression. I'd been someone once, a good student, a dedicated sister, a girl with plans and dreams, and a future. Now I was just another invisible person that people stepped around on their way to somewhere better. But I'd held on to something my abuela had told me before she died, back when I was 8, and still believed the world was fair. She'd squeezed my hand with her papery fingers and said, "Maya, mija, your worth isn't measured by what you have. It's measured by who you are when you have nothing." I'd whispered those words to myself on the worst nights, when the cold made my teeth chatter and despair felt like a weight on my chest. I'd promised myself that even if I had nothing, I'd still be someone who helped others. Someone who stood up when it mattered. Someone who wouldn't let the world make her cruel or indifferent. That promise was tested on the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in late October, around 11 at night, and I'd already settled onto my bench for the evening. The park was mostly empty at that hour, just the occasional person cutting through on their way home from a late shift. I'd learned to sleep lightly, always alert to footsteps or voices, ready to grab my backpack and run if necessary. I'd wrapped my denim jacket tighter around myself and was just drifting off when I heard it. A woman's scream, sharp and terrified, cutting through the quiet night. I sat up instantly, my heart pounding, every instinct screaming at me to stay hidden, to not get involved, to remember that I was vulnerable and alone with no one to help me if things went wrong. But then I heard her voice again, pleading, "Please, just take it, just take the purse, please don't hurt me." And I was moving before I could think about it, my abuela's words ringing in my ears. My promise to be someone who helped echoing in my mind. I ran toward the sound, my worn sneakers slapping against the concrete path, and saw them near the park entrance. 3 men surrounding a woman, one of them yanking at her purse while she held on desperately, her designer coat torn at the shoulder, her face twisted in fear. She was maybe 50, with carefully styled gray hair that was coming loose from its clip, and even in the dim streetlight I could see she was terrified. One of the men raised his hand like he was going to hit her, and something in me just snapped. "Hey!" I shouted, running straight at them, my voice stronger than I felt, my body moving on pure instinct and adrenaline. "Leave her alone!" The men turned toward me, and I saw their faces clearly for the first time. Young, probably early 20s, with the hard expressions of people who'd learned to take what they wanted. The one holding the purse laughed, a harsh sound that made my stomach clench with fear. "What are you gonna do about it, little girl?" he sneered, his grip tightening on the woman's purse. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't have anything except the desperate courage of someone who'd already lost everything and somehow found that liberating. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a fallen tree branch about 3 feet long, and swung it at the man's arm with all the strength I had. The impact sent a shock up my arms, but it worked. He yelped and let go of the purse, stumbling backward, and the woman fell to the ground, clutching her bag to her chest. "Run!" I screamed at her, positioning myself between her and the men. The branch held out in front of me like a sword, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep my grip. "Get out of here!" The second man lunged at me, and I swung the branch again, catching him across the shoulder. He cursed and grabbed for it, and we struggled for a moment, my feet sliding on the damp grass, my breath coming in gasps. I could hear the woman behind me scrambling to her feet, could hear her phone ringing as she dialed what I hoped was 911, could hear the third man shouting something about cops and getting out of there. Then suddenly they were running, all three of them disappearing into the darkness of the park, their footsteps fading into the night. I stood there for a moment, the branch still clutched in my trembling hands, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and fear and the delayed realization of what could have happened. My legs felt like water, and I had to lean against a tree to keep from falling down, my breath coming in ragged gasps that sounded almost like sobs. "Oh my God," the woman said, and her voice was shaking too, cultured and educated even in her fear. "Oh my God, you saved me. You actually saved me." She was standing now, her expensive coat hanging off one shoulder, her purse clutched to her chest, her carefully made-up face streaked with tears. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, gratitude mixed with something else, something that looked almost like wonder. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine," I managed to say, even though my hands were still shaking and my heart was racing so fast I felt dizzy. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" No, I'm fine. Thanks to you." She was looking at me more closely now, and I saw her gaze take in my worn clothes, my too thin frame, the backpack at my feet that contained everything I owned. Her expression shifted, became more complex, and I felt the familiar flush of shame creep up my neck. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Maya," I said quietly, wanting desperately to disappear now that the adrenaline was fading, leaving behind only the reality of what I was, what she could see so clearly. "Maya Rodriguez." "Maya." She repeated my name like she was memorizing it, her hand reaching out to touch my arm gently. "I'm Catherine Walsh. And I owe you my life, Maya. Those men, if you hadn't come." Her voice broke, and she pressed her hand to her mouth, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Anyone would have done the same thing," I said, even though we both knew that wasn't true. I'd watched people walk past homeless veterans begging for change, had seen them step over people sleeping in doorways, had learned that most people were very good at not seeing what made them uncomfortable. "No," Catherine said firmly, her hand still on my arm, warm through my thin jacket. "No, they wouldn't have. You put yourself in danger to help a complete stranger. That's not something just anyone does." She was fumbling in her purse now, pulling out her wallet. "Please, let me give you something. Let me thank you properly." "I don't want money," I said quickly, the words coming out sharper than I intended. I'd accepted a lot of things in the past 3 months. Free coffee, leftover food, hand-me-down clothes, but somehow taking money for helping someone felt different, felt like it would change what I'd done into a transaction rather than a choice. "I'm just glad you're okay." Catherine looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Then she nodded slowly, putting her wallet away. "Can I at least call you a cab? Make sure you get home safely?" "I'm good," I lied, glancing back at my bench, at the backpack that held everything I owned. "I don't live far." She followed my gaze, and I saw the moment she understood. Her face changed, became softer somehow, sadder, and when she looked back at me there was something in her eyes that made my throat tight. But she didn't say anything about it, didn't ask questions or offer pity, just reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "If you ever need anything," she said, pressing it into my hand. "Anything at all. Please call me, Maya. I mean it." I took the card, more to be polite than anything else, and glanced at it in the streetlight. "Dr. Catherine Walsh," it read, with a phone number and an address in the expensive part of town where I'd never been. "Thank you," I said, tucking it into my pocket even though I knew I'd never use it. People said things like that all the time. Call me if you need anything, but they never really meant it. Not for people like me. "No, Maya," Catherine said, her hand squeezing mine gently. Thank you. What you did tonight, it matters. You matter. Then she was walking away, her heels clicking on the pavement, her phone pressed to her ear as she called for a ride. And I was alone again in the park with my bench and my backpack, and the fading adrenaline that left me feeling hollow and exhausted. I sat down on the bench and pulled out the business card, studying it in the dim light. Dr. Catherine Walsh. I wondered what kind of doctor she was, what her life looked like, whether she'd remember this night a week from now, or whether it would just become a story she told at dinner parties about the time she was almost mugged. I wondered if she'd noticed my worn sneakers, or my too thin wrists, or the way my jacket was held together with safety pins. I wondered if she'd felt sorry for me, and the thought made my chest ache with a familiar shame. But then I thought about the way she'd looked at me, the way she'd said, "You matter," like she really meant it, and something in me shifted slightly. I tucked the card carefully into the plastic folder with my high school diploma and my college acceptance letter, the 3 documents that proved I'd been someone once and might be someone again. Then I lay down on the bench, pulled my jacket tight around me, and tried to sleep, my abuela's words echoing in my mind. Your worth isn't measured by what you have, but by who you are when you have nothing. I didn't know it then, but Catherine Walsh had meant every word she said. And she was about to prove it in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. The weeks after that night blurred together in the familiar rhythm of survival. I went back to my routine, the early morning bathroom visits, the long days at the library, the careful navigation of a world that preferred not to see me. I thought about Catherine sometimes, wondered if she was okay, if she'd recovered from the fear of that night. The business card stayed in my backpack, a small reminder that someone had seen me, really seen me, even if just for a moment. Then something strange started happening. Small things at first, so subtle I almost didn't notice. The library started offering free coffee and granola bars in the morning, with a sign saying they were donated by an anonymous benefactor. The shelter I sometimes went to for showers expanded their hours and added a job training program. The community college started advertising full scholarships for students in difficult circumstances, with an application process that seemed almost designed for someone like me. I applied for that scholarship on a whim, not really believing anything would come of it. I'd learned not to hope too hard, not to let myself imagine futures that seemed impossible. But 3 weeks later, I got a call on the cell phone I'd managed to keep active by working odd jobs. I'd been accepted. Full scholarship, including a stipend for books and living expenses. I could start in January, just 2 months away. I cried in the library bathroom for 20 minutes, my hand pressed over my mouth to muffle the sobs, overwhelmed by a gratitude so intense it felt like pain. This was my chance. This was the door opening, the path back to the life I'd thought I'd lost forever. I called Miguel that night from a payphone, my voice shaking as I told him I was going to college after all, that I was going to keep my promise, that everything was going to be okay. The next 4.5 years were the hardest and best of my life. I moved into the dorms with my single backpack of possessions, surrounded by students who had cars and laptops and parents who called to check on them. I worked 3 part-time jobs to supplement my stipend, studied until my eyes burned, and slowly, painfully, built myself back into someone who believed she deserved to be there. I made friends, real friends who knew where I'd come from and didn't treat me differently. I joined the social work club and volunteered at the homeless shelter, giving back what had been given to me. I maintained a 3.8 average and got accepted into the graduate social work program. And through it all, strange little blessings kept appearing. An anonymous donation that expanded the campus food bank. A new scholarship program for former foster youth. A mentorship program that paired students with professionals in their field. I never connected the dots, never thought to wonder if someone was watching over me, making sure I had what I needed to succeed. I'd almost forgotten about Catherine Walsh by the time graduation day arrived. Almost, but not quite. Sometimes I'd pull out that business card and look at it, remembering the way she'd looked at me that night, the way she'd said I mattered. I'd think about calling her, letting her know I'd made it, that the girl she'd met in the park had found her way back. But I never did. What would I say? Thank you for not forgetting me? Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible? Graduation day dawned bright and warm, a perfect May morning that felt like a promise. I put on my cap and gown in my dorm room, staring at myself in the mirror and barely recognizing the confident young woman looking back. I'd gained weight, filled out into health again. My hair was clean and styled, my face no longer gaunt with hunger and stress. But more than that, something in my eyes had changed. I looked like someone who knew her worth, someone who'd survived and thrived, someone who'd kept her promises. Miguel was there, 17 now, and tall, having gotten permission from his foster family to attend. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, his voice cracking as he said, "You did it, Maya. You actually did it." My friends were there, cheering as I walked across the stage. My professors were there, the ones who'd believed in me and pushed me and refused to let me give up. It felt like the culmination of everything I'd worked for, every late night studying, every moment of doubt I'd pushed through, every time I'd chosen to keep going when giving up would have been easier. The ceremony was held outside on the main lawn, hundreds of graduates in their caps and gowns, thousands of family members and friends filling the seats. I sat with my fellow social work students, listening to speeches about service and purpose, and making a difference in the world, feeling like maybe, finally, I belonged here. When they called my name, Maya Rodriguez, Bachelor of Social Work, summa cum laude, I walked across that stage with my head high, accepting my diploma with hands that only shook a little, looking out at the crowd and thinking about how far I'd come from that park bench. After the ceremony, there was a reception on the lawn, tables of food, music playing, graduates taking pictures with their families. I was standing with Miguel, both of us eating cookies and laughing about something, when I saw her. Catherine Walsh, walking across the lawn toward me, looking exactly as I remembered except for maybe a few more gray hairs, wearing an elegant blue dress and carrying a large manila envelope. I froze, the cookie halfway to my mouth, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. It couldn't be her. It couldn't be the woman from the park, the woman I'd saved 5 years ago, the woman whose business card I still carried in my wallet like a talisman. But it was. I'd recognize her face anywhere, had seen it in my dreams sometimes, had wondered so many times what had happened to her. "Maya," she said, and her voice was exactly as I remembered it, warm and cultured and somehow both strong and gentle. She was smiling, but there were tears in her eyes, and she was looking at me like I was something precious and unexpected. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so incredibly proud of you." "Dr. Walsh?" I managed to say, my voice coming out as barely a whisper. How did you... I don't understand." She laughed, a sound that was half sob, and reached out to take my hand. "I've been waiting 5 years for this day, Maya. 5 years of watching you fight and struggle and refuse to give up. 5 years of being so amazed by your strength and determination. And now here you are, graduating summa cum laude with a degree in social work, about to start graduate school in the fall. You did it. You actually did it." My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of her words. "Watching me? What do you mean watching me? I don't..." And then suddenly, like puzzle pieces clicking into place, I understood. The scholarship that had seemed designed for me, the expanded shelter hours, the food bank donations, the mentorship program, all of it, all of those small blessings that had appeared exactly when I needed them. "That was you," I breathed, my hand flying to my mouth. All of it. The scholarship, the programs, everything. That was you. I told you that night that you mattered, Catherine said, her grip on my hand tightening. I meant it, Maya. What you did for me, putting yourself in danger to help a stranger when you had nothing, when you were struggling just to survive, that showed me who you are at your core. And I couldn't stop thinking about you. Couldn't stop wondering if you were okay, if you were safe, if you were getting the chances you deserved. She paused, wiping at her eyes with her free hand. So I hired a private investigator to find you. And when I learned your situation, when I understood that you were sleeping in a park despite having been accepted to college, despite being brilliant and kind and everything good in this world, I knew I had to help. But why? I asked, tears streaming down my face now, my voice breaking. Why would you do all that for me? You didn't even know me. Because you saved my life, Catherine said simply. And because I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And what's the point of having it if I can't use it to help someone who deserves every opportunity in the world? She held up the manila envelope. I wanted to wait until today, until you'd proven to yourself what I already knew, that you're capable of anything you set your mind to. I didn't want you to think this was charity or pity. I wanted you to know that you earned this through your own hard work and determination. But now I want to give you something that will make the next part of your journey easier. She handed me the envelope, and I took it with shaking hands, Miguel pressed close to my side, both of us staring at it like it might contain something magical. Open it, Catherine said gently. Inside was a letter, typed on expensive stationery, and a key. I pulled out the letter first, my eyes scanning the words, my brain struggling to process what I was reading. It was from a law firm, explaining that Dr. Catherine Walsh had established a trust fund in my name. A trust fund that would cover my graduate school tuition, living expenses, and provide a monthly stipend. A trust fund that would continue until I completed my education, no matter how long that took. A trust fund that would give me the freedom to focus on my studies and my future without worrying about survival. I can't accept this, I whispered, even as my heart was soaring with hope and disbelief. This is too much. I can't. You can and you will, Catherine said firmly. Maya, you gave me my life back that night in the park. You risked everything when you had nothing. Let me give you this. Let me help you become the social worker I know you're meant to be, the one who's going to help kids like Miguel, like you were, find their way to better futures. She held up the key. And this is to an apartment I own near campus. It's yours for as long as you need it. Furnished, utilities paid, a real home where you can study and rest and not have to worry about where you'll sleep tonight. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there with tears pouring down my face, this envelope in my hands that represented everything I'd dreamed of but never dared to believe could be real. Miguel was crying too, his arm around my shoulders, and somewhere in the background I could hear my friends cheering, having figured out that something amazing was happening. Why? I finally managed to ask again. Why me? You could help hundreds of people with this money. I do help hundreds of people, Catherine said, smiling through her own tears. I run a foundation that funds scholarships and programs all over the city. But you, Maya, you're special. Not because you saved me, although I'll never forget that, but because of who you are. Because when you had every reason to become bitter and hard and focused only on your own survival, you chose to stay kind. You chose to help someone else. You chose to be brave when being invisible would have been safer. That's the kind of person the world needs more of. That's the kind of social worker who's going to change lives. She pulled me into a hug then, and I let myself collapse into it, sobbing into her shoulder, feeling 5 years of struggle and fear and desperate hope finally release. She held me tight, this woman who'd been my guardian angel without me even knowing. This stranger who'd become my savior. and I felt something I hadn't felt since my abuela died. I felt like someone's family. When I finally pulled back, wiping at my face with my sleeve, I saw that a crowd had gathered around us. My friends, my professors, other graduates and their families, all watching with smiles and tears of their own. Miguel was grinning so wide his face looked like it might split, and when I looked at him, I saw hope in his eyes, the same hope I felt blooming in my chest. "I don't know how to thank you," I said to Catherine, my voice still shaking. "I don't know how to... This is..." "You already thanked me," she said, squeezing my hands. "5 years ago in a park when you put yourself between me and danger. Everything since then has just been me trying to pay forward what you gave me." She smiled, that warm smile I remembered from that night. "Besides, I'm not done yet. I want to be there when you graduate with your master's degree. I want to be there when you open your own practice or get hired by the agency of your dreams. I want to watch you change the world, Maya Rodriguez, because I know you're going to do exactly that." We talked for another hour, Catherine telling me about the foundation she ran, about the programs she'd started, about how that night in the park had changed her perspective on what really mattered. She told me about her own daughter, who'd died young, and how seeing my determination had reminded her of the girl she'd lost. She told me she'd been following my progress through the scholarship committee, reading my papers, hearing reports of my volunteer work, watching me transform from a terrified homeless teenager into a confident young woman ready to take on the world. "I have a proposition for you," she said as the reception was winding down. "After you finish your master's degree, I'd like you to come work for my foundation. We need someone who understands what it's like to need help, someone who knows how to design programs that actually work for people in crisis. Someone with your compassion and your experience and your brilliant mind. Think about it. You don't have to decide now, but know that the offer stands." I nodded, overwhelmed by everything, by the trust fund and the apartment and the job offer, and most of all by the knowledge that someone had believed in me so completely, had invested in my future so generously, had seen me when I was invisible, and decided I was worth saving. That evening, after Catherine had left and the celebration had ended, Miguel and I went to see the apartment. It was in a beautiful old building near campus, with hardwood floors and big windows that let in golden evening light. It was furnished simply but comfortably. A real bed with clean sheets, a desk for studying, a kitchen with actual food in the refrigerator that Catherine had stocked. There were books on the shelves, including several about social work and trauma-informed care. There was a framed photo on the desk of me and Miguel from 5 years ago. One I'd forgotten existed, both of us smiling despite everything. "She really did all this for you," Miguel said, his voice filled with wonder as he explored the space. "Because you helped her that one time." "No," I said, understanding it fully now. "She did this because of who I chose to be when I had nothing. She did this because I proved that having nothing doesn't mean you have to become nothing." I looked at my little brother, at the hope in his face, at the future that suddenly seemed possible for both of us. And now I get to pay it forward. I get to become the social worker I always wanted to be, the one who helps kids like us find their way. I get to keep the promise I made to you. 3 years later, I graduated with my master's degree in social work, and Catherine was in the front row, cheering louder than anyone. I took the job at her foundation, designing programs for homeless youth and former foster kids, using my own experience to create support systems that actually worked. I helped hundreds of young people find housing, education, and hope. I reconnected with Miguel regularly. Watching him graduate high school and start college himself, both of us proof that one person's kindness could change everything. And every year on the anniversary of that night in Morrison Park, Catherine and I meet for dinner. We talk about the lives we've changed, the programs we've started, the kids who've found their way because someone believed in them. We talk about courage and kindness and the ripples that spread from a single choice. And we remember that night when a homeless teenager with nothing chose to be brave, and a grateful woman chose to give her everything. I keep Catherine's original business card in my wallet still, creased and faded but precious. And next to it, I keep a new card, my own. Maya Rodriguez, MSW, Director of Youth Services, Walsh Foundation. It reminds me every day that your worth isn't measured by what you have, but by who you are when you have nothing. It reminds me that one moment of courage can change 2 lives forever. And it reminds me that the world is full of Catherine Walshes, waiting to help, if only we're brave enough to be Maya Rodriguez's, willing to step forward when it matters most. The envelope Catherine gave me that graduation day contained more than just financial security. It contained validation, hope, and proof that being seen, really seen by one person who believes in you, can transform everything. It contained the message that kindness isn't weakness, that compassion isn't foolishness, that helping others when you have nothing doesn't make you a victim. It makes you a hero. And now, every day in my work, I try to be for other young people what Catherine was for me. I try to see them, really see them, past the circumstances and the statistics and the case files. I try to believe in them the way she believed in me. I try to give them not just resources, but hope. Not just assistance, but recognition of their worth. Not just help, but the message that they matter, that their struggles don't define them, that their choices reveal their character, and that character is everything. What an incredible journey from that park bench to where I am now. From invisible to invaluable. From homeless to home. From desperate to determined to make sure no other kid has to choose between survival and dreams. Catherine's gift wasn't just the money or the apartment or the job. It was the belief that I was worth investing in. That my act of courage meant something. That who I was in my worst moment revealed who I could become in my best ones. Have you ever made a choice between doing what's safe and doing what's right? Have you ever helped someone when you had nothing to give? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear about the moments when you chose courage over comfort, kindness over self-preservation. And if this story touched your heart and reminded you that compassion is never wasted, that one act of bravery can change everything, that true worth comes from character, not circumstances, please show your support by hitting that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss our inspiring stories about real people whose courage and kindness transformed their lives. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.